Greetings, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. Thank you so much for your continued support. And today I'm going to be, I am continuing my series of videos called Remembering Star Trek. And so today I'm continuing that with taking a look at the show that turned me into the hardcore Star Trek fan that I am today, Star Trek The Next Generation. This was the first Star Trek show I ever watched on TV, and I loved it. It was great. The cast was great. The effects were amazing. Everything about the show just screamed Star Trek to me when I watched it growing up in the 90s. And for those of you who don't know, this show premiered in 1987 and ran for 7 seasons from 1987 to 1994. And apparently that became the thing with the other Star Trek shows with the 2 Star Trek shows that premiered in the 90s, Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Those 2 shows also had 7 seasons, and even to this day, they're still extremely popular, and everyone out there loves those shows, and that's great and all, but for me, whenever I think of Star Trek, the only show that comes to mind for me is Star Trek The Next Generation. And on top of that, 1987 was also the same year that the original Ninja Turtles cartoon premiered. So the fact that the Ninja Turtles are still on television, even to this day, with the current cartoon on Nickelodeon, is kind of interesting because there hasn't been a new Star Trek show since Enterprise, and yet they've already announced that there's going to be a new Star Trek show premiering next year in 2017, which, I don't know about you guys, but I think it should actually premiere this year because, like I said before in my previous videos, this year it marks Star Trek's 50th anniversary, so yeah, but hey, at least we have Star Trek Beyond coming out this summer, so I'm good. Okay, but yeah, I mean, and also, I do have to give major props to the cast, because I firmly believe that this show has the best cast out of all the Star Trek shows, okay? Of course, I'm not trying to diss on the cast of, the original series, the animated series, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, or Enterprise, but again, for me, this cast was the cast that I knew growing up, and yes, while I did watch a Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, when I think of Star Trek, I only think of the Next Generation, and whenever I think of, the best cast out of all the shows, I always think about the cast of The Next Generation. From Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard, Jonathan Frakes as Will Riker, Marina Sirtis as Counselor Deanna Troi, LeVar Burton as Geordi LaForge, Brent Spiner as Data, Gates McFadden as Beverly Crusher, Will Wheaton as Wesley Crusher, Diana Muldaur as Dr. Catherine Pulaski, Denise Crosby as Tasha Yar, Michael Dorn as Worf, Cole Meany as Chief Miles O'Brien, I can't remember the actress who played Keiko O'Brien, but she was great too. Michelle Forbes as Ensign Rowe, Patty Usakawa as Nurse Alyssa Ogawa, and also Whoopi Goldberg as Guinan. Yes, and for those of you who are wondering if I'm talking about the same Whoopi Goldberg from the Sister Act movies, Jumping Jack Flash, and one of the co-hosts from The View, yes, that's the exact same Whoopi Goldberg that played Guinan on this show. Yes. And for those of you who only know Whoopi Goldberg as one of the co-hosts from The View, well then, look her up on IMDb, and I'm pretty sure you will see Star Trek The Next Generation on her IMDb page. So, there you go, okay? So, let's get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about my favorite episodes as well as the essential episodes that you should definitely watch from Star Trek The Next Generation. Beginning with Encounter at Farpoint. This is the very first episode of the show, and it is awesome. I love it. And while some people say it wasn't that good, it could have been a lot worse, believe me. But still, great episode, great introductory episode to all the main characters and stuff like that. And also, this episode features the first appearance of the character of Q, played by John Delancey, and he probably made the most appearances as Q in this show. He only appeared once in Deep Space Nine, and I believe maybe like 2 or 3 times in Voyager, but that was it. He never appeared in any of the Next Generation movies, and he never appeared in Enterprise, which is kind of interesting because that would have been awesome if that actually happened. But sadly, it didn't, so there you go. And also, Encounter at Farpoint also had the first appearance of one of the cast members from the original series, and that cast member was the late great DeForest Kelley, playing a very elderly Dr. McCoy. And I have to say that that the old age makeup that they used on DeForest Kelley looked amazing, and it still does. Like, it really holds up after all these years and stuff. So yeah, it looks great, and the episode is phenomenal, and it is definitely a really great first episode to this show. The Naked now. This episode is basically somewhat of a sequel or continuation of the episode The Naked Time from the original series. And basically, you know, the Enterprise crew, they get infected with the Psi 2000 virus, same one from the original series episode. And also, this is the only time in which we see Data be intimate with one of the crew members. And that crew member turned out to be Tasha Yar. Yeah, wrap your brain around that for a moment. I'm really not sure how it was done, but it happened, and yeah, so very interesting, weird episode, but still definitely a very good one too, so there you go. Hyde and Q. This episode marks John Delancey's second appearance as Q, and basically, I believe that was the one where either Q was stripped of his powers, or he was looking for someone to give his powers to, and I believe the person that he chose was Will Riker. So yeah, I really don't remember if that was the episode where Q lost his powers, or if he decided to give his powers to Will Riker. So yeah, anyway, so there you go. The Big Goodbye. This episode is very essential because this episode marks the first time we see Captain Picard going into the Dixon Hill simulations in the holodeck, and the holodeck made its first appearance in the Next Generation. However, there was an episode of the animated series, and I totally forgot to talk about it, in which there was a holodeck on the original Enterprise, and that was kind of interesting, so yeah. But anyway, but still, this is the first time we get to see the Dixon Hill holodeck simulations and stuff like that, and and it is very, very good. And Picard does this like several times throughout the show, and it is awesome, and I love it, and it's definitely a really great episode. If you're a fan of those episodes which you see Captain Picard doing those Dixon Hill simulations in the holodeck. So there you go. Data lore. This episode is extremely essential because it is the first. Because This episode marks the first appearance of Data's evil twin brother, Lore, who is also played by Brent Spiner. So basically, whenever there's an episode that features Data and Lore in the same episode, it's Brent Spiner playing both roles, and he does an amazing job. I always want to know how he did it and stuff. So if I ever meet Brent Spiner at a Star Trek convention one day, I'm definitely going to ask him how he was able to play both roles. And it is great. And this episode is definitely a really great episode to watch if you want to see Lore's first appearance in Star Trek The Next Generation. So there you go. Heart of Glory. This episode is very, very essential because we get to... It's basically a Worf-focused episode, which is great. I love Worf. While he's not my favorite character from The Next Generation, that title belongs to Data. Worf is definitely my second favorite character from the show, and it's great. I definitely love episodes in which they focus on one of the main characters, and this episode is definitely one of the best. So, there you go. Skin of Evil. This episode is very, very essential because this episode marks the first time one of the main characters from the show dies. And that character is none other than Tasha Yar. And while it certainly wouldn't be the last time that we would see Denise Crosby on the show, it was the last time we got to see her play this character. Or at least a lot of people thought for the time being, but I'll get to the episode. I'll talk about that episode soon, so there you go. But yeah, definitely a very sad, emotional episode, but it's definitely a very touching episode, and I love it. It's definitely an essential one, so there you go. The Child. This episode is the first episode from season 2, and I have to tell you guys right off the bat that it's really not all that great, but I still consider it essential because this episode marks Dinah Muldaur's debut as Dr. Catherine Pulaski. I really don't know why Gates McFadden decided not to return for season 2, so instead they brought in this other character. And what's interesting is that Dinah Muldaur actually guest starred in 2 episodes of the original series, playing completely different characters. And then I found out that years later, she did the voice of Dr. Leslie Tompkins in Batman the Animated Series. Yes, that was her. And I don't know how many episodes that character appeared in, but when I watched that episode in which she first appeared, and I was like, where have I heard that voice before? And then I found out it was Diana Muldaur, and I was like, wait a minute, that's the same actress who played Dr. Pulaski on season 2 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Wow. So yeah, but still, this is a very, very silly, goofy episode. Apparently, there's this light thing or something like that impregnates Deanna Troi, and it's just really weird and goofy and silly. But still, if you're a fan of Dr. Pulaski, then watch this episode. But if you just want to go ahead and skip this one, then go ahead and do it. I believe this is also the first episode in which Whoopi Goldberg appears as Guinan. So, there you go. Q Who. This is yet another Q episode, or episode which John Delancey appears as Q. And this episode is 100% essential because this is the first episode in which we get to see the Borg. Yes, this is the very first time the Borg make their appearance in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it definitely wouldn't be the last. So very, very, very essential episode. So there you go. who watches the Watchers? Now, this episode is very, very crucial for a number of reasons. Basically, this is the episode in which the Enterprise crew, they land on planet and they mistake Captain Picard for a god. And it's very interesting to see that, and it basically deals with Picard, deciding as to whether or not he should presume this godlike figure or not. So, yeah, very, very interesting episode. Definitely give it a watch if you want to see what happens next. So, there you go. Deja Q. Yes, this is yet another Q episode. Oh my gosh. And I believe that this was the one in which Q gets stripped of his powers, and then eventually he gains them back. So, there you go. Very, very crucial episode to watch. So, there you go. Yesterday's Enterprise. I love this episode so much. Yeah, I'm not even joking. Basically, it's an alternate reality episode. It's not a mirror universe episode, but it is one that takes place in an alternate reality. And basically what happens is that this time fissure opens up, and there's a ship that's coming through it, and it turns out to be the Enterprise C. And basically what happens is that because it's in the TNG timeline, time is all screwed up. Worf's not there, and instead Tasha Yar is there, played once again by Denise Crosby. So that was really great. I love this episode, and basically what happened is because the Enterprise C went through that time fissure wormhole thing, it prevented the Enterprise C from being destroyed, and because of that, it somehow messed up with the timeline in a way that the Klingons and the Federation are still at war. They're still fighting each other. They're not allies and stuff. So basically, the Enterprise D crew have to make sure that the Enterprise C gets back to its original timeline, and it does. So there you go. Again, great episode, and it's great to see Denise Crosby as Tasha Yar. But of course, for some reason, it wouldn't be the last time. So yeah, and I'll get to that episode at the end. So there you go. Sarek. This episode is great because it brings back the late great Mark Leonard as Sarek, and it is awesome. Basically what happens is that Sarek is suffering from this disease that is basically making him emotional. And for those of you who don't know, Vulcans, pure-blooded Vulcans like Sarek and so forth, they basically, they have control over their emotions, but for somehow Sarek is actually losing control of his emotions. And so basically what he has to do is do a mind meld with Picard in order to control himself. And it's a very, very heartwarming episode, and I love it. And Mark Leonard is on top of his game in that episode, and it is awesome. So there you go. The Best of Both Worlds. This is the first of many two-parters in The Next Generation, where part 1 is the season finale and part 2 is the season opener. So basically, part 1 is the end of season 3 and part 2 is the beginning of season 4. And I love this two-parter so much. It is awesome. And basically what happens is that Picard gets assimilated by the Borg, but instead of the collective giving him a designation like 3 of 5 or 2 of 7 or something like that, they instead give him the name Locutus. They give him his own individual name, which is kind of weird because that never really happens with the Borg all that much. But anyway, still, this is a great two-parter. I absolutely love it. And basically, this episode became the setup for the second Next Generation movie, Star Trek First Contact. and it's a great episode. I absolutely love it. Definitely watch both parts, and it is great. Family. This episode continues right after the events of Best of Both Worlds Part 2, and it's a great episode. We get to see Picard visit his family in France. We get to see Wesley interact with this holographic, or I could say Wesley, what was it? Oh, he views this holographic message from his late father, Jack Crusher, and we also get to see Worf meet up with his adoptive parents, the Rosenkos, and it's a great episode. I absolutely love it, and it is awesome, especially the scenes in which Picard visits his family in France. It's a great episode, and I love it. I really do. So there you go. Brothers. This is another episode which features lore, and it is great. Basically what happens is that both Data and Lore, they receive this message from their creator, Dr. Soon, and basically what happens is that he has created an emotion chip, and he wants to give it to Data, but then Lore ultimately swipes it from him. So, yeah, again, if you're a fan of Brent Spiner's lore, then definitely watch this episode. So, there you go. Cupid. Yes, this is another Q episode, and it's actually pretty funny because this one features Q basically turning some of the Star Trek basically turning some of the main characters into characters from Robin Hood, and Picard as Robin Hood is trying to get to this archaeologist person that he likes named Vash, and Vash is taking on, and basically in that episode, Vash is supposed to be Madame Marian, I believe. So yes, very, very funny episode, and I love it, and it is great. So there you go. Redemption. This is yet again another two-parter, and I love it. And basically what happens is that the Enterprise crew, they're trying to settle things in this Klingon civil war, I guess, where basically there are two different sides, and one is trying to be, and basically it's this fight between the Gowron and Duras, and ultimately deciding which one will be the leader of the Klingon High Council, pretty much. And it's a really great two-parter. I absolutely love it. Definitely give it a watch. It is amazing. So there you go. Darmok. I absolutely love this episode for a variety of reasons. Reason number one, it's an episode about communication between two different alien races that don't understand each other, and it's a really great episode. I highly recommend it. And also, it features Paul Winfield, who played Captain Terrell in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, as the character that Picard is interacting with on the planet. So definitely give it a watch. I highly recommend. So there you go. Unification. This is yet another two-parter, and it is extremely essential because this episode marks the return of the late great Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and it is phenomenal. And also, this episode features the appearance. I don't know if it's the first appearance or any, but it features an appearance by Denise Crosby as this character named Sela, who turns out to be Tasha Yar's daughter, and it's really weird. And basically, the explanation is that when the alternate version of Tasha Yar went to the Enterprise C in yesterday's Enterprise, apparently she met up with some Romulan, or some Romulan captured her, and apparently they got married or something like that, and they had a kid, and that kid turns out to be Sela. So, yes, it's a very weird episode, but yes, it's a very weird explanation, but it's better than nothing. So there you go. But yeah. So anyway, it's still a great episode, great two-parter. It's great to see Leonard Nimoy as Spock once again. So there you go. Borg. This episode features the first, but thankfully not last, appearance of this Borg drone that is given the name of Hugh by Geordi, and it's a great episode. And you could definitely see Picard's frustration because he's like, "Oh, a Borg drone. Oh, we should get rid of those things because of what happened to me in Best of Both Worlds," and blah 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 blah. But again, it doesn't happen. So yeah, again, it's a very interesting episode, but again, I love it, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. So there you go. The Inner Light. This episode is extremely essential because it is the episode in which Picard, he's basically put into a situation where he's living another person's life, and it is a great episode. I highly recommend it, and it's also the one where he got that flute, in which he uses some of the episodes, the whole yeah, that episode and that flute. So yeah, so there you go. All right. Next up, Time's Arrow. This is yet another two-parter, and it basically deals with this archaeological team, and they're going through the ruins of old San Francisco, and for some reason they find Data's head there, which is kind of weird. So basically the crew, they have to go back in time and figure out what's going on and stuff like that, and in the process they meet up with Mark Twain. That is really impressive, and for some reason Guinan is there, and it's a very interesting two-parter. Definitely give it a watch if you have the chance. So there you go. True Q. Yes, another Q episode. Go figure. Basically, I believe that this is the one in which there is a person on board the Enterprise who could possibly be a member of the Q Continuum, and it's basically this character trying to figure out whether or not she should stay on the Enterprise or whether or not she should join the Q Continuum and stuff like that. Very interesting episode, and I highly recommend it. So yes. Chain of Command. This is a very, very great two-parter. It basically deals with Picard. He gets captured by the Cardassians, and he is trying to escape. And at the meantime, there's this other person who is captain of the Enterprise, and basically he's not running things all that well and stuff like that. And Picard, he's trying to escape from the Cardassians and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. It's a very interesting episode, and it's also the one in which Picard says, "There are 4 lights." So if you basically want to know where that came from, then there you go. So now you know. Yeah, okay. Birthright. This is a very great two-parter, and it's actually one that crosses over with Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I believe. So yeah, again, very, very great episode, and basically deals with Worf going to this colony where hopefully he'll learn more about what happened to his family and blah 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 blah. I believe, and it's a very great episode, and I highly recommend it because it is awesome. And again, it's another Worf-centered episode, and I love it. Descent. I love this two-parter for a variety of reasons. Reason number 1, Laura's back. Reason number 2, Hugh is back. And reason number 3, this is the episode in which Data gets the emotion chip. However, he decides not to have it installed in himself. So, yeah. And it actually doesn't happen until Generations, but I'll talk more about that when I get to talking about that movie. So, there you go. Gambit. This is another Great two-parter. Sadly, I don't remember much of what happened in the episode, but it's still a great episode. Definitely a great two-parter. Check it out if you get the chance. Parallels. This is actually not a two-parter, but I love it. And basically deals with Worf coming back from this Batlet tournament, and for some reason, he keeps phasing from one parallel universe to the next, and he's trying to get back to his own universe, and it's a very, very great episode. I highly recommend it because it is awesome. So, there you go. And last but not least, All Good Things. This is the final episode of Next Generation, and it is awesome, and I love it. Highly recommend it. This is the last time I get to see John Delancey as Q in Next Generation, and to me, this is the best finale out of all the Star Trek shows, you know. And while I do enjoy some of the others, to me, this is the best one of them all, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And it also features the last time we get to see Denise Crosby as Tasha Yar, the last time. So there you go. So great episode, great finale to this amazing show, and I love it. So there you go. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week when I talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So until then, take care and live long and prosper. See you guys next week.